What celebrity did bad things but everyone forgot what they did because they're famous? Boy George. He beat a guy with a metal chain after cuffing him to a radiator. Should make for an interesting sequence in his forthcoming biopic. In my country there is a TV host that killed several people in a car accident. Twice. It was his fault both times. You can still see him on TV. George Wallace, the infamous pro-segregation governor of Alabama in the 60s, did not inform his wife that her doctor diagnosed her with cancer. Doctors during this time often told patients' relatives of their cancer diagnosis instead of the patient, especially if the patient was female. The reason was that she was running for governor as a surrogate for him since he had reached his term limits and he thought that the diagnosis would negatively affect her chances of winning. She ended up finding out about it 4 years later during a visit to a gynecologist. But unfortunately the cancer had progressed to the point that she died from it 3 years after learning that she had cancer and that her husband had known about it. He ended up successfully getting the term limits repealed and went on to serve a few more terms as governor. People forget about this, I'm assuming, because of all of the other itty things he did. Edit. Her name was Lillian Wallace. For those interested. Rick James kidnapped 2 women with his wife while on separate crack binges. Steven Tyler became the guardian for a 16-year-old he was dating when he was 25 so he could bring her on tour. Knocked her up too. Tom Cruise is the celebrity face for a massive cult that kidnaps, rapes, and is likely involved in human trafficking and child marriages. The cult that outlawed the ducking IRS. But yeah, Mission Impossible was cool, I guess. Is no one gonna mention Caitlyn Jenner hitting that pregnant woman and forcing her into traffic? Then getting the Woman of the Year award? I guess I remembered that wrong. Turns out it was an elderly woman, and the woman died when she was hit by a Hummer. Also, remember that Brendan Schaub, the millionaire podcaster comedian, spit in someone's face and then threw them through a sliding glass door because they asked him to stop eating his food? Look into it. Natalie Wood was probably murdered by Robert Wagner and witnessed by Christopher Walken. Mark Wahlberg beat and blinded a Vietnamese guy just because he was Vietnamese. I guess Noon's really forgotten, but Roman Polanski is still getting awards and standing ovations for his films. Emma Roberts beat the it out of her then boyfriend Evan Peters, then continued to co-star in the same show as him. Charlie Sheen once had unprotected sex with his girlfriends, plural, when he has HIV. Ryan Reynolds did Green Lantern. Jared Leto's been accused of abuse by half a dozen 13-15 years old girls. Creed Bratton has been a leader and a follower of numerous cults. Tim Allen got caught in an airport with 1.5 pounds of sugar and gave up his connections so he only did 3 years instead of life. Brick killed a guy with a trident. Steven Tyler was a serial rapist in the 70s and 80s. Now he's an old woman. Gwyneth Paltrow. She's a con artist and manages a MLM, as well as recommending women treat their illness by putting rocks up their V and steaming their privates, causing harm to people. You can say she's an idiot, or just that she's a sociopath that loves making money off hurting other people. I think you'll know the song Despacito, who is performed by Luis Fonsi. Well, this little piece of it was married to a beautiful woman who had breast cancer. During her entire process of chemo he wasn't there, and he even told her, when she had a breast removed, that he didn't want her as a woman. This ended up in a divorce. Karl Malone got a 13-year-old pregnant and refused to take care of that child. Can we have a reverse thread? Which celebrity has a clean background? Paul Walker was having sex with underage girls that were half his age, after news of the actor's death broke. The Daily Mail and In Touch Weekly both ran features of how Walker's current girlfriend, Jasmine Pilchard Gosnell, was coping with her loss. Both of them noted that the pair began a relationship while she was 16 and he was 33, and before Pilchard Gosnell, Walker had dated another woman, Aubrianna Atwell, while she was allegedly 16 as well. Left square bracket. And since there are so many statutory abuse apologists in the comments, here's some clarifying legal info that what he did was 100% a felony, both times. Not enough people seem to know that Sylvester Stallone did this. Vince Neil was driving drunk and caused a crash that killed his passenger. Woody Allen. There is a lot of creepy stuff associated with him. Easy to find if you search a little. It also seems like there's a lot of silence over Harvey Weinstein stuff as well. There was that time James Franco tried to duck a teenager after she posted the exchange on social media of her telling him how old she was and him not caring and still wanting to see her. All he had to do was go on a few morning talk shows a couple days later and say, "You don't always know who you're talking to online." And everyone instantly forgot about it. He framed it like he was the one who was deceived and people just let it slide even though that clearly wasn't the case. Coco Chanel was a Nazi. Tyler Tequila is a Nazi. Caitlyn Jenner killed someone. Will Smith was in YouTube Rewind 2018. I sneezed once and Tom Hanks only said bless you not God bless you. Ariana Grande. She went to a donut shop in the middle of the night, licked the donuts when the worker was busy doing something and was distracted, and got the person fired. I'm still salty because I used to get donuts there all the time in high school. Not to mention, who the duck does that? We forgot how itty it was, but think about the sort of person who would do that. Rick James. He and his girlfriend literally kidnapped someone and burned them with their crack pipe and sexually assisted her. But people just want to go Rick Jamesich. Edit. Sexually assaulted not assisted haha. Ted Nugent hid his pants to dodge the draft and has a song called Jailbait which ends with him pleading with an officer not to arrest him and instead share a 13-year-old. Drake seems to be ignored for grooming a young underage fan, at age 14, into being his girlfriend until she recently turned 18 this year. And now he's even, supposedly, doing it to a young actress. Matthew Broderick killed 2 people. Mark Wahlberg also committed a few hate crimes here and there. R. Kelly married Aaliyah when she was 15 years old in the mid-90s and yet it took like 2 decades for people to start boycotting him as a sexual predator. He was still making songs with Beyonce and Lady Gaga etc. for a long time. Drake. Nobody cares that he's a child fiddler and Rihanna basically ran for the hills because he makes good music. Logan Paul going to the suicide forest in Japan and laughing at a dead guy hanging in the tree while showing the corpse. Katy Perry and sexual misconduct I guess it'd be called. Brandy killed someone in a car crash. Cheryl Cole and her racially motivated attack on a cleaner. OJ Simpson has her Instagram. Lol. I mean it seems to most that Drake is actively grooming young girls but it seems to be forgotten as soon as new evidence surfaces. I see people still saying great things about Tom Cruise. All the time. Especially on our movies. It's like they forgot he's huge into Scientology. You know. The ducked up group that locks people up in compounds until they conform. That group that has gotten away with abuse and murder. That group that skirts taxes with their bullet church status. The group that intimidates and ruins lives that go against them. It's a huge duck and evil cult. He's a very big part of it. And yet people seem okay with him. Jimmy Superfly Snuka killed his girlfriend and got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Floyd Mayweather beats his wife with hands that are registered as lethal weapons in front of his children. But because he wins nobody cares. Vince Neil of Motley Crue drove drunk and killed one of his very good friends and gave the 2 people in the other car very bad injuries and brain damage. He also had other DUIs after this. But hey, everybody loves a good party song and now he has a famous liquor brand. Dr. Dre beat a reporter, D. Barnes, savagely for writing a negative story on him. Or one he perceived as negative. I don't know. More than he picked her up by her hair and began slamming her head and the right side of her body repeatedly against a brick wall near the stairway as his bodyguard held off the crowd with a gun. After Dre tried to throw her down the stairs and failed. He began kicking her in the ribs and hands. She escaped and ran into the women's restroom. Dre followed her and grabbed her from behind by the hair again and proceeded to punch her in the back of the head. He and Eminem would go on to joke about it as the man who slapped D. Barnes. More than Dre produced and is featured in rapper Eminem's song Guilty Conscience, in which Eminem references the incident as a humorous put down. Dre reportedly fell out of his chair laughing at it. Johnny Cash walked out on his wife and kids saying that his career was more important to him than they were, then went on to eventually settle down with June Carter and start a whole new family while still ignoring the kids he already had. Ozzy Osbourne once tried to kill Sharon. Elvis dated a 14-year-old girl, then when she had a child mentioned he was unable to love a woman with a child even after he started dating adult women. He treated them like crap. David Bowie slept with and dated a 13-14-year-old, who he also cheated on with multiple men and women at the same time. Steven Tyler adopted an already very troubled teenage girl he met backstage, had sex with her and pressured her into having an abortion, and was generally rather abusive towards her. Jay-Z stabbed a producer, Rivera. Chris Brown beat up Rihanna. Gandhi was actually incredibly racist. Johnny Cash was almost responsible for wiping out an endangered species of bird after his truck caught fire and he fled the scene, which caused a square mile of forest to burn down, taking out half the population of the species. Or on the topic of this particular misdemeanor, his nephew, who was with him at the time, said that the fire wasn't accidental as Johnny claimed, and instead was started in an attempt for Johnny to stay warm. But because he was doped up on drugs, he failed to notice the fire getting out of control. Cash was also quoted as saying, "I didn't do it, my truck did, and it's dead, so you can't question it, and I don't care about your damn yellow buzzards." Steve Jobs pretended his daughter wasn't his for years, until he was sued to admit he was when she was 8 years old, and even then he was still often neglectful. Gordon Ramsay slapped on 2 pieces of bread and made the poor girl call herself an idiot sandwich. John Landis killed 3 people. Not really a celebrity, but politicians are a kind of celebrity, I think. The Chappaquiddy incident is a good one. Newt Gingrich, Republican politician, married his high school geometry teacher when he was 19 and she was 26. Had multiple affairs, and while she was in the hospital undergoing treatment for cancer, he came into her hospital room and told her he was divorcing her. Friends of Gingrich report that Newt told them that she wasn't pretty enough to be the wife of a president, which he planned to be. He proceeds to divorce her, and then doesn't pay child support, and first wife has to get help from the church to make ends meet. I say first wife because he gets his divorce and in 6 months marries his second wife, but while with second wife has an affair with his staffer. During this affair, the massive hypocrite leads the impeachment proceedings of Bill Clinton for lying about an affair, gets divorced, and 4 months later marries his latest wife. He also blamed past infidelities on his passion for this country. Oh, and he is credited with driving a wedge between the parties in politics and being a leader in Christian family values. You can currently find him as a popular pundit on news programs. Peter Yarrow of Peter, Paul and Mary was in prison for 3 months for indecent liberties with a 14-year-old girl. From Wikipedia. In 1970, Yarrow was convicted of and served 3 months in prison for taking improper liberties with a 14-year-old girl who went with her 17-year-old sister to Yarrow's hotel room seeking an autograph. Yarrow answered the door naked and made sexual advances that stopped short of intercourse. The 14-year-old resisted his advances, but according to reports, did not call for help. Yarrow served 3 months of a 1 to 3 year prison sentence. Wesley Snipes, he is a real D and assaulted Halle Berry. R. Kelly been peeing on underage girls for as long as I can remember. Mitchell Fassbender isn't allowed within 100 yards of his ex and her kids, and allegedly dragged her out of a moving car and threw her over a chair and broke her nose after she found him unconscious covered in his own pee and tried waking him up. People always seem to forget that Josh Peck ran over Oprah. Steve Carell promised college tuitions to 3rd graders but didn't fall through to it. XXXTentacion beat his pregnant girlfriend Blue but everyone forgot cause he was murdered. Errol Flynn. He went on trial for abuse of an underage girl once, and when he was cleared of all charges, the public and fans cheered and had a little girl run up to him and present him with flowers outside of the courthouse. He did all sorts of other scummy things in his lifetime, but his fame kept him away from any type of repercussion until his death. Caitlyn Jenner caused a car crash that killed Kim Howe. Jenny McCarthy helping to push the anti-vaccination movement. Bill Murray beat his wife, threatened her repeatedly, and made a point to remind her that nobody would believe her because of his public persona. Gandhi was a total hypocrite whose beliefs about modern medicine killed his wife but later took modern treatments for himself, was instrumental in helping crush African rebellions against the British, was really creepy with young girls and enemas. Full stop. Ian Watkins, the singer from Lost Prophets, some of his it is sickening. Here's a link to Wiki for anyone interested. Left square bracket. He's the guy who told the mother of a 1-year-old boy, "If you belong to me, so does your boy," when talking about depraved acts he had done. He also said, in a recorded call to a fan, that his crimes were for mega lols. Sick it. Steve Jobs got his girlfriend pregnant and went on to insist that she was a whore and 28% of men in the US could be the father. He became a millionaire while she became a single mother on welfare. He refused to assist her until he was court-ordered to pay child support. Besides that money, he never helped her raise the child. But weirdly enough, Steve still decided to name a computer after the child. What happened to the sexual assault allegations against John Travolta? They just disappeared. Apparently he is on the down low and has made numerous advances to male staff. In the UK, Leslie Grantham, who played the character Dirty Den in popular soap opera EastEnders, was involved in a sex scandal. He showed his willy on a webcam, whilst dressed as Captain Hook. During this scandal nobody mentioned that he's also a convicted murderer, having killed a taxi driver in West Germany during a botched robbery. No one seemed to mind that he was famous and successful despite having shot a man who was just trying to earn a living. But they did mind when he flashed his knob in a pirate costume. To be fair, he shouldn't have done that either. Lol, I'm gonna get tons of downvotes for this. But, XXX Tintation. Amy Schumer admitted to raping a guy and people laughed. Beyonce Knowles Carter. She preaches empowerment and is lauded for it, but behind the scenes utilizes sweatshop labor that pays 54 cents an hour. Capital A. Milline. Winnie the Pooh creator and author. Got his ideas from his son's stuffed animals. His son was horrified by the lack of privacy shown by his father, and use of his real name, Christopher Robin Milline, in his father's books. Christopher was bullied unmercifully through school. His father showed total indifference to his son's plight. After college, Christopher claims that he couldn't find a job because of his childlike namesake. Yet his father pushed on. He repeatedly pleaded with his father to stop, but his dad saw dollar signs and chose to ignore his son's emotional well-being. Chris Brown, probably one of the biggest pieces of it out there in the celebrity world and still somehow has a career after the things he's done. It blows my mind how so many people still support this guy. Harvey Milk, at 33, had a sexual relationship with a 16-year-old boy. Tarantino, he spit in Uma Thurman's face, WTF, and almost got her killed. He convinced her to drive around a track in a car that she wasn't comfortable with, but she did it because she trusted him. He drove the car himself, but he didn't take it around the route she's supposed to go on, and there was a sharp turn and it almost killed her. It permanently ducked up her neck and both her knees, and Uma Thurman said it was because he insisted she do her own stunts. Does anyone remember when Drake was outed as a pedophile? Cause I sure do. Keanu Reeves has been accused of taking several women in Fantastic Dates S. A lot of people seem to conveniently forget the nasty act Jim Cummings was accused of. On another note, notable feminist Joss Whedon is, ironically, a cheater and abuser. Guess he only cares about women's rights in fiction. Didn't Sean Penn beat Madonna within an inch of her life, tying her up and abusing her for hours, if not days? Cheryl Cole beat up toilet assistant and got convicted for it. Mark Wahlberg blinded a guy after stabbing him in the face with a broken bottle. Elvis, not saying he did anything wrong per se, but it's not normal to be hanging out with a 14-year-old Priscilla when you're in your mid-20s. But let's never talk of that because he is the king. BoJack Horseman took Sarah Lynn on a month-long bender resulting in her death. Then he nearly choked his co-star to death on camera. Chris Brown, he beat the daylights out of Rihanna and everyone made that excuse that she had a bad mouth, or he was young and needs time to grow. People still make music with him now even though he's been caught stalking the mother of his child and allegations of abuse. But the guy still has a thriving career. Not sure if this has been said yet, but Winston Churchill. 1. He was a known white supremacist. He said, "I do not admit, for instance, that a great wrong has been done to the Red Indians of America or the black people of Australia. I do not admit that a wrong has been done to these people by the fact that a stronger race, a higher grade race, a more worldly wise race to put it that way, has come in and taken their place." 2. Advocated use of poisonous gas against Kurds and Afghans, saying, "I cannot understand this squeamishness about the use of gas." He wrote in a memo during his role as Minister for War and Air in 1919, "I am strongly in favor of using poisoned gas against uncivilized tribes." 3. Starved India like Mao and Stalin did in the 1900s. More, here, and a whole other bunch of awful things. Matthew Broderick killed 2 women in a car accident caused by gross negligence by driving on the wrong side of the road in Ireland in 1987 and got off with a $175 fine. Gary Glitter, whose music still is used in movies to this day. Doesn't matter, he got caught practicing pedophilia.